We're living in a unique period of time. It's possible now to affect the resilience of communities far into the future by matching an opportunity and a problem. The baby boomer generation of small business owners will soon be seeking to sell their businesses. According to a recent study by Project Equity, we know that about half of the Washington state small businesses with employees are owned by baby boomers. Many of these businesses will be in transition in the next few years. It's estimated that 85% of these companies do not have a succession plan. The opportunity is a wave of businesses coming up for sale. The problem is systemic wealth inequality, which is a structural problem. Wealth inequality is growing year over year, and it's creating innumerable social problems, but it's not the fault of small business. It's a systemic problem rooted in ownership design of companies. Traditional business model design provides goods and services with the goal of maximizing shareholder value. So how do employees fare in that business model? If you think about a financial statement, employees show up on a profit and loss as expenses. So businesses manage employees as expenses, and that often doesn't feel good for the employee. Ownership models that focus on maximizing shareholder value have contributed to this unequal wealth distribution, where 5% of our nation's population now owns 2/3 of the nation's wealth. Those at the top are adding to their net worth, while those at the bottom are creating negative wealth. We have a unique opportunity right now, with all these businesses seeking to transition, to evolve our thinking about community wealth and reimagining ownership. Focusing on ownership allows us to take a deeper look at the role of businesses in evolving communities. A worker-owned cooperative provides the means for employees to have an ownership share, which transfers ownership from the few to the many. The worker-owned cooperative structure is based on 7 principles that bake in worker capability building through education and community engagement. The cooperative practices democratic governance, so the owners have an equal voice and an equal opportunity to contribute. The principles embed the cooperative as a part of the community ecosystem. My dream is to work towards building the communities we want to live in, starting with what we choose to measure. In economic and business development, we measure capital formation as an indicator of investment, assuming investment is good. If we peel this back, we might ask, what kind of investment and for what purpose? We measure jobs created and retained, assuming jobs are good. If we peel this back, we might ask, are these jobs meaningful? Are they creating good citizens? And are they allowing the workers to learn and grow? We also measure revenue growth. And if we peel this back, we might ask, where are those profits going? Who ultimately benefits? And peel back further, what percentage of those profits actually stay in community? We measure business starts. And if we peel that back, we might ask, what kinds of business structures actually add resilience to communities? And how can we build more of those? Business support organizations could choose to work more closely together in these succession scenarios, tracking our collaboration and learning about worker ownership together. With great admiration, I'm happy to introduce the Northwest Cooperative Development Center's Legacy Project. I look forward to learning more about business succession and the cooperative model with you.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you? No. The actual one is, this is a presentation for education purposes only. Does not create an attorney-client relationship, and you're welcome to ask questions throughout the presentation and then talk to your own attorney when we're finished.
So we are from Colorado. We are pioneering both a new structure for the practice of law, as well as working on alternative business structures. We focus on all forms of shared ownership, not just worker ownership. This includes resident ownership, multi-unit housing ownership, freelance, transportation, technology, data ownership. We work across sectors, across industries, We couple that with business model design, formation, finance and securities. We help both conversions and startups raise mission-aligned capital. And we are a team of 6 attorneys focused in Colorado, but we have clients in more than 20 states and several countries.
So, baby boomers, myself included, there's a whole bunch of us turning 65 every day. And as that generation continues to age, many of them have small businesses. It's amazing how many Americans don't work for big companies, but they work for small businesses. Millions and millions of Americans work for small businesses. And those small business owners, a lot of them in the baby boomer generation, are going to be retiring. And so we need to figure out what to do with all those employees that are working for those small businesses. Only around 20% of businesses actually sell. We talk to many, many small businesses every week, every month, and they're saying, I know I can go out and sell my business right away. There's no problem. It turns out it is a problem. There aren't, and we'll go in the next slide, many issues involved with selling your business on today's market. So you need a plan. You need a succession plan as an owner of a business. You need to know where you're going, what's happening, and what you're going to do with your business when you retire, how you're going to retire. Do you want to retire next year, in 5 years, in 10 years? Do you want to retire tomorrow? What is your plan? If you don't have a market for the business, if there's nobody who is going to buy your business, what do you do? If you don't have family to inherit the business, your kids are not interested, they've moved out of state, they don't care about your business. You know, they may have worked in the business when they were kids and they said, okay, I had enough of that, don't want to do that anymore. And they're off doing their own thing, which is perfectly normal. But if you don't have kids to inherit, what do you do? If you want to leave a legacy, if you have a business that you've created and it's your baby, it's your idea, it's your dream, and you've spent years and years, 10, 15, 20, 30 years building this business, and you don't want to just close the door, which is what happens to a lot of those 80% that don't sell. They end up just closing their doors because they don't have anywhere else to go. And in that case, the employees lose their jobs, the tax base in the community is shortened, and it's not a good situation. So keep having a plan, getting a plan, helps keeps jobs in the community, helps you create a legacy for your business, and helps those employees keep jobs.
And let's be honest, a lot of startups are founded on the belief that this could or could not go somewhere. And a lot of small businesses continue to evolve, putting duct tape on different problems and more or less kind of getting by. And come 10, 15 years later, the reality sets in that the business is really inseparable from the founder. And this process is really about identifying what would need to be done to systematize the business so that an owner could, in fact, step away and retire someday. And that will enable the business to actually carry on in a sustainable way without relying on the owner-operator to be there day in and day out. This is probably, to a room like this, speaking to the choir, but employee ownership is an opportunity to exit the business profitably. For a business that's not likely to sell, that might mean liquidating whatever assets the business has, putting it up for auction, or just closing the doors. And employee ownership might, for some, be the only option. And this is a way for an owner to retire with some retirement assets or nest egg. It protects the value of the business that was created that may not have marketable value. For service businesses that don't have assets, this is a way for the employees to place value on what the owner has created, and enable the owner to walk away with dignity. This is also about creating a smooth transition for management. Again, building systems, training, building capacity, and enabling the business to continue sustainably. This is about creating retirement income. Lots of owners are really just operating the business to earn a living for themselves, and this is a way for them to retire. This is not only these are not only the benefits for baby boom business owners, but business owners at any level. And in fact, we're starting to see lots of younger folks coming to this presentation that are thinking even further ahead about the future of themselves, their family, and their business. And we're encouraged by that. This process ideally works best when there's time to think and to plan. So this is not only about retiring business owners, but also business owners thinking someday about the future for themselves and their business. Employee ownership has opportunity to defer or minimize, in some cases, the potential for capital gains on the sale of a business. And lastly, this is about creating a strategic direction for the business that employees are excited about, employees and the other stakeholders of a business that they're excited about and can support. Employee ownership is about form and substance, it's about substance over form. There are many forms of employee ownership. We're not going to go into a whole lot of detail on the employee stock ownership plan or the ESOP. It's a highly regulated creature of the tax code that involves creating a qualified retirement trust. They tend to be applicable for much larger enterprises with more than 50, 60 million in revenue, and generally more than 50 employees. For most of the folks we're talking to, that's not an apt model, but we want to highlight that there are varieties of options. Then there's the traditional cooperative, a cooperative corporation, or a limited cooperative association. We'll talk about those in much more detail. Hybrid or shared ownership LLCs and corporations, we do quite a bit of work with those, and we'll talk a little bit about what they look like. And we'll mention but not talk extensively about purpose trusts and phantom stock and quasi-ownership models as well. Again, this is about substance over form. These are employee ownership is not a legal term of art. It's the expression of a set of values and a structure that enables ownership and responsibility at a higher level than mere employment.
One thing we've found about employee ownership, and we've looked at the statistics on it, is that it's a business model that's really sustainable. During downturns in the economy, employee-owned companies usually fare better. They have more resilience than traditional corporate structures or even limited liability company structures. And the reason we're discovering is that the employees themselves are willing to be flexible themselves. When they find that they are owners and not just employees, they have more stake in the company, and so they're willing to bend to take a pay cut, for example, or to not get a bonus this year if it's going to help the company survive in the long run. So we're finding that employee ownership as a business model is an incredible. Yes, Joe.
You mentioned before that one of the benefits is that it can protect value that that's not marked, can't come to market. So what does that, if the value is not exchangeable, if there's no market value, what can you just say more about what that value is?
The example that comes to mind is, say, a services business that has no hard assets. It doesn't have inventory that it could liquidate and sell. And a strategic buyer that comes in looking at it thinks this business is really, its value is wrapped up in the owner. The owner has the relationships, the Rolodex, does all the sales and marketing. And without that person, if that owner-operator is looking to retire, that business has really no propensity for ongoing earned income. Whereas the employees who work there, maybe the ones to carry out the contracts, provide the services, have tremendous value in the team, the culture they've created, and employees in a case like that would be willing to invest in preserving the structure that's there, potentially at a price that's in excess of what a strategic or financial buyer would be looking at if they're just looking at cash flow. So these are some of the more well-recognized. We tried to pull some local brands that folks are familiar with. These are generally ESOP-owned companies. The largest known ESOP in the United States is Publix Supermarkets with more than 40,000 employee owners. New Belgium Brewing Company, another popular employee-owned company, is also 100% employee-owned. That's probably about $1 billion company. We've worked on employee ownership conversions as small as 3 workers to as large as 50. and that's using the cooperative model or an LLC model. ESOPs generally, again, apply at much larger scale. We've seen ESOPs or heard of ESOPs working at about 20, 25 people, and then up to the thousands.
Employee ownership. These are a list of items of what employee ownership is not. It is not collective decision-making. It's not a group of 10 employees that are now owners coming together and deciding how many pencils we're going to buy for the company this week. That's not what it means. It does not mean giving up immediate control. If you're an owner of a company and you want to convert to an employee-owned company, there are mechanisms that you can put into your conversion documents that give you veto rights and give you the ability to maintain some control as you move through the conversion process and moving forward. It doesn't mean opening a complaint box. I'm an owner now, therefore I can complain about anything that's going on in the company. That's not what it means. Employee ownership is educating the employees about the responsibilities and the duties of being an owner, but it doesn't give them the right to just start complaining. It's also not a one-size-fits-all approach. You're going to be hearing today about many different models and ways to have an employee-owned company, but there are certain industries and certain organizations that should not be employee-owned companies. I had a doctor one time come to me and say, I want to sell my business to my employees, and he had 15, 20 employees. Then he found out that generally it's one member, one vote, and he had no desire to have the employees actually voting or participating in the governance of the organization. So it turned out employee ownership was not for him. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not applicable to all businesses, the doctor's office being one, and it is definitely not socialism.
Now, employee ownership can be collective decision-making, but it's not necessary. We've seen everything from collective decision-making to the most traditional hierarchical forms of decision-making. So this is just to point out it doesn't have to be these things.
Broadly, a co-op is a for-profit company. They are not nonprofits. We get lots of people coming in asking, I want to form a nonprofit co-op. They don't mix. They don't mix at all. As a co-op, the members receive the benefits from the co-op. As a nonprofit, the members are not allowed to receive any financial benefits from the nonprofit. So they can't mix. It is a company that's owned and managed by its employees. And they are both the owners and the workers. And that's confusing for owners that are converting to an employee-owned business because they keep thinking of them as just employees. And the employees think of themselves often as just employees, but now they are also owners. And getting them to understand those rights and responsibilities takes some time, but we'll be going over that.